Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webcast. My name is Christine Dursey-Davis. I'm the Executive Director of the Ohio Chapter of APA and Chair of the New Urbanism Division, and I'm your webcast moderator. Today is Friday, February 24th, and we will be hearing the presentation Ethics Skits by the Delaware Planning Thespians. Okay, for technical help, during today's webcast, you can type your questions in the chat box found in the webcast toolbar to the right of your screen, or you can call the 1-800 number shown. And for your content questions related to the presentation, type those in the questions box located in your webinar toolbar, and those will be answered at the end during the Q&A. And a logistics note, we also have a live audience while we also have a webcast, so our format will be a little different, but if you've joined us for this particular webcast before, it's generally the same setup as before. On your screen is a list of our sponsoring chapters and divisions. Thanks to all of those participating sponsors for making these webcasts possible and free to their members. Today in particular, our webcast is sponsored by the Delaware Chapter of APA, and you can learn more about the Delaware Chapter at delawareapa.org. Coming up on your screen is a list of our upcoming webcasts. You can register for these by visiting our webcast webpage, ohioplanning.org/planningwebcast. You can log your CM credits for attending today's webcast by heading over to planning.org, heading to your My APA account, and then you can search for CM activities either by the title of today's event or the event number, both of which can be found, again, on our webcast webpage, ohioplanning.org/planningwebcast. And like us on Facebook, Planning Webcast Series, to receive up-to-date information on our sessions. And we are recording the webcast. It will be available on our YouTube channel. You can just search Planning Webcast, and a PDF of the presentation will also be available on our webcast webpage, ohioplanning.org/planningwebcast. I don't remember if I've mentioned this or not, but this is approved for 1.5 CM credits for live viewing only, and these are ethics credits that are available. Okay, with that, I am going to turn it over to today's presenters. Okay, Peter, it's all you.
Good afternoon from Dover, Delaware, and a good morning to those west of here. Welcome to this episode of the Certification Maintenance Webinars for the Continuing Education of Certified Planners. Today we will address the ethical responsibilities of being a certified planner. This webinar has the following format. We will present 2 pre-recorded radio plays presenting a variety of actual or potential ethical issues. Each play will be followed by a live panel discussion of the play and of any comments or questions from webinar viewers. We suggest that you have a copy of the Code of Ethics handy for reference as you consider the issues addressed in the skits. The code is available on the APA website at planning.org/ethics. This session may be counted for 1 1/2 CM ethics credits. Please remember to visit planning.org to update your credits after today's presentation. Also, please participate in the discussion, asking questions or sharing your thoughts on the violations of the Code of Conduct that we illustrate. Use the question box on your GoToWebinar screen, and we'll attempt to cover them when we go live. And now, on to the first play.
Terry is the former planning director for the city of Springfield. She spent 20 years there and left for the private sector. She's been with ABC Planners for 1 year and is still trying to find her way around and make her mark. Cindy is a planner for ABC Planners and has been with the firm for 2 years. Brad is the owner of the business and is both an engineer and a certified planner. They are working on a big plan for Marugel, the big company in town. The keeping of Marugel as a client will keep the firm afloat for several years.
Hi, Terry.
Hi, Brad.
How's the work going on the new Marugel plan?
It's going fine. Cindy has been putting the draft together. It should be ready for the presentation to the Marugel people next week.
Great. Make sure Cindy is on top of it. The plan needs to be great. We can't afford to lose Marugel as a client.
Understood. I'll make sure it's done right.
When it's done, we'll need to get it through the city's process and get a permit ASAP. See what you can do about that.
No problem. I'll take care of it.
Cindy is in her office. She has been working on the Marugel plan for the last 2 months. She's finalizing the plan and talking to Jackie, the town of Springfield's planner.
Hi, Jackie. I have a few questions.
How can I help?
I want to verify the calculations for parking spaces, and I want to make sure I understand the zoning code.
No problem. Based on the use as large-scale warehouse and office, the calculation is 1 parking space for every 400 square feet. Based on the square footage, 150,000 square feet. After 100,000 square feet, 20% of the parking spaces can be compact spaces. Also, if the Planning Commission determines that the number is excessive, they can grant a waiver for a reduction in the overall number of parking spaces.
Great. When is the deadline for the next meeting?
It is in 3 weeks for the meeting the month after that. About 2.5 months at the earliest.
Thanks, Jackie, for the clarification, and have a good day.
Anytime. Hope to see you this weekend at the Marsh Rats game.
Maybe. Bye.
Bye.
Hi, Terry.
Hi, Cindy.
How can I help? What's going on?
I just met with Brad, and we were discussing the Marugel plan.
I was just working on it. I just talked to Jackie at the city to clarify the final details.
Good. Let me take a look at it.
Sure. Here it is. It's still draft, and we don't have a final approval from the client yet.
No problem. I'll get back to you when I've looked it over.
Okay, Terry. Just let me know if there are any changes.
Will do. Bye.
Bye.
Cindy's in her office when Terry comes in.
Hi, Terry.
Hi, me. What kind of crap is this?
What are you talking about?
This plan is a bunch of baloney. How do you expect this to be presented to the client or the city? And what is this about endangered tree moss on the property?
Terry, I've been in contact with the client and the city about the plan. It complies with the zoning ordinance, and the environmental section discovered the tree moss during their site visit.
What? This doesn't comply with the code, and how dare you talk to the client alone behind my back? Who did you talk to at the city?
I talked to Jackie.
Jackie? You shouldn't have talked to Jackie. She's my niece.
Terry, she's the planner at the city, and I talk to her a lot about questions I have with the city's zoning code.
Fine. Where did these ideas come from? The planet formerly known as Pluto? Because that's how far out they are. Really? There is endangered tree moss? Where do people come up with this stuff? It's almost as bad as the endangered striped muskrats. I don't know. It could be a tie for bad. Back to the plan. There are tons, literally tons of inconsistency in this plan. My 4-year-old granddaughter could do a better job than this pile of baloney. Fix it, and fix it now.
What was that? I've talked to her and the client the entire way, and her 4-year-old granddaughter could do a better job? Really? She's 6. What's next? She'll remind me it's performance review time, and what does she want me to do about the endangered tree moss? Ignore it?
I've spent the last 3 days trying to fix the items Terry has noted. Terry, here's the updated plan you've asked for.
Good. It should be better. Let me take a look.
Terry's in her office, and Cindy's in hers.
Now, this is the plan I can present to the client and my old friends at the city. The nerve Cindy has to talk with a client without telling me. The nerve. Well, maybe I was a little bit harsh.
What to do with Terry? Maybe I should go talk to Brad? I knew the plan wasn't complete and told her as much. What was with the yelling? She's never done that before. And then I went and yelled at my fish because I was so upset. Not good. Maybe I should apologize to Fishy, my fish.
Hi, Terry. The plan looks good, and the client will be here in a few minutes.
I'm so glad you're good with the plan. I've worked really hard on it.
Hi, Terry and Brad.
Hi, Mr. Smith.
Hi, Mr. Smith. Here's the plan for the new Marugal site. I've really worked hard on it for months, and it's almost done.
That's great. When can we move forward with the submission to the city? I need this project to move forward faster than anticipated due to financing. And what about the endangered tree moss Cindy mentioned? Is that something to worry about?
Don't worry about the tree moss or the city. Taking care of them is the reason we hired Terry. She knows everyone and can use all of her connections to get the plan through the process as fast as possible.
That's great. We really have big financial pressure to get the plan approved and under construction in 3 months. That's not a problem, is it?
Of course not. We can make it work. Right, Terry? And no need to worry about the tree moss.
Sure. We can work something out. Though the city's process is typically 2.5 months, and that doesn't include the other agencies, transportation, fire marshal, etc. That typically takes up to 6 months to get through, and we are only at the beginning of their processes.
We will make it work.
Sure?
Thanks. There is a large bonus in it for you if you can get it done sooner. See you later.
Terry, we need that bonus. The company needs his business.
The city process does take some time. I'm not sure we can make their time frame work. Did we tell them of the city's time frame when we started working with them?
Of course I did. What do you take me for? But we need them as a client. Just talk to Jackie at the city. She's family, right? You also have other contacts there. Talk to them and get it done.
Okay.
Hi, Jackie. Hiya, Terry. How's it going in the private sector? It's going fine. How's the family? The kids are fine, thanks. And how's Davy, your grandson? He's 6 now, right?
Yes, he is, and they're all great.
What can I do for you today?
Well, I've got a client that needs to get a plan through the city's process ASAP. Is there any way you can make that happen?
What is ASAP? You know we have a process.
Well, they need to be under construction in 3 months.
3 months? Aunt Terry, you know the process can take up to 6 months. We do have an expedited process, but it costs $30,000, and still there is no guarantee it will get done in less than 3 months. And since the city has no control over the other reviewing agencies, we also have 6 plans that are already in the review process.
I'll talk to my client and see if they want to go through the expedited process. Is it set in stone, that $30,000 fee?
The amount is not negotiable. You know that. You wrote that section of code.
Any way we can get it moved up and on the schedule without the fee?
I can look and see where we are with the other plans that are in the review process, but I can't make any guarantees.
Thanks, Jackie. Say hi to your mom for me. I'll see you at the family reunion next week.
Brad, do you have a minute?
Hi, Cindy. Sure, what's going on?
I've been working on the Marugal plan for a while now, and it keeps changing. Do you know what's going on? I've seen Terry and haven't heard anything about it in the last week.
Don't worry about it. Terry's working on it and has done a great job with the plan.
Hi, we're live. I'm Jim Galvin, the Professional Development Officer of the Delaware Chapter of the American Planning Association. Please participate in this webinar. It only makes sense and only is effective if we have questions from you, our audience. And please type them in the chat pod, or as Christine said, she'll open up the phone lines a little bit later. One thing we did want to add is that we're awarded 1.5 CMs for this, but the easiest way to find it is type in the event number, which is 912-0294. Type that into the search box and it pops right up. Because of the nature of the presentation, we've recorded some of the elements, like you just heard. Some of the elements are live. So with us today, we have 3 distinguished chapter members to discuss the implications of the Marugel story. We have Jeff Rigner, Debbie File, and Linda Robb to discuss the ethical conundrums of the story, which was taken from an actual occurrence, but fictionalized a bit. So Jeff Rigner is a vice president for the Whitman Reckford and Associates and manager of the firm's Wilmington office. He's a professional engineer and a certified planner with 27 years transportation and land use consulting experience. Say hi, Jeff.
Thanks, Jim.
Debbie File is an associate planning manager for the KCI Technologies, Inc., and provides planning services to several Delaware and Maryland municipalities. The services include downtown development districts and comprehensive land use planning, zoning and code regulation updates, grant writing and administration, private-public partnerships, community outreach and education, land development reviews, capital improvement plans, and municipal administration assistance. Debbie proudly served in the United States Air Force prior to working for the town of Georgetown as the planning and zoning director for 9 years. Debbie has been serving as a planning consultant for 11 years and serves on the Delaware Chapter Executive Board and the Delaware Association of Public Administration Council members. Debbie is also an active member of the Lower Delaware, Maryland Building Officials Association and the Delaware Building Officials Association. Say hi, Debbie.
Hi, thank you, Jim.
And lastly, we have Linda Robb. Linda is an AICP senior planner with the Institute of Public Administration at the University of Delaware, where she provides planning assistance to Delaware municipalities. She has local government as well as private consulting experience. Linda holds a Master's of Planning degree from the University of Virginia. Say hi, Linda.
Hi, Jim.
So there are issues involved with this scenario, but not all are related to the AICP Code of Ethics. For purposes of this skit, assume all planners are certified planners, unless otherwise noted. Some of the questions to follow may seem obvious, but all certified planners should review the code each year, and we may even have participants that use these scenarios to prepare for the AICP exam. I hope so. So, for the panel, first question is the fact that Terry had left Springfield and was now preparing a plan for a client to be considered by the city in violation, is it a violation of the code's rules of conduct? And I'll open that up to anybody on the panel. Jeff.
I'll give it a shot, Jim. In looking at the code, it looks like there are a couple sections that may apply, but it isn't entirely clear. One of the sections is B3, which is not accepting an assignment from an employer or a client to publicly advocate a position on a planning issue that's adverse to a position we publicly advocated for before when she was with the city. So it's not really clear whether she's advocating for a specific position that's against what she did at the city. Outside the specifics of the code, there certainly is the appearance, at least, of a conflict of interest. And you know, there are many local agencies. I know here in Delaware, the state, for example, requires appearing before an ethics board when you leave a public position to go work outside the state, and you can't work on projects on which you were specifically involved. But it doesn't preclude you from working for an agency or consultant who does work with the state.
Any other comments?
Well, I would agree with you there, Jeff, but I also would wonder, I think as you do as well, whether or not the city code does have some sort of regulation about employees who leave and then go to work for firms or organizations that may be representing clients before the town. Sometimes you have to wait a year or two before you can do that. This is one of the unknowns. I think, and maybe I'm foreshadowing some of the stuff that's going to come along, something you really need to be careful of.
I also agree with the previous two comments. Another principle would be A2C, so our responsibility to our clients or our employers. So we should avoid a conflict of interest or even the appearance of a conflict of interest in accepting assignments from clients or employers. While they may have the knowledge, I'm sure there's other suitable employees that may be able to finish the task within the firm. So therefore, it may not be, you could avoid a conflict of interest by assigning tasks to different team members rather than the one that could have the perception and or contractual issues to accept the task.
I think also that we noted in the beginning that Terry has not been away from his public job for very long. As time passes, that becomes less and less meaningful as new stuff comes up, you know, in the town, and Terry is beyond that. But he's just so newly removed that I think a best practice is, as Debbie suggests, is to just, you know, keep a little bit of a hands-off sort of approach.
Thanks. I'm going to do something a little different, but I'm going to ask Debbie a specific question. Does Terry's berating of Cindy for requesting guidance or talking with the client constitute a breach of the rules or principles of the AICP Code?
So my first comment without the AICP Code is provide better management guidance. So I feel that 99% of the problems usually run from lack of communication. But I would say you may run into problems with other rules, companies, and policies, but if we were looking at the actual rules of conduct, I would have to say B8 or 9, we shall not as public employees engage in private communications with planning process participants if the discussions relate to a matter over which we have authority to make a binding final determination if such communications are prohibited by law or by agency rules. And number 9 is we shall not engage in private discussion with decision makers in the planning process. However, as a consultant, you run into this person was probably trying to help to get the information to get the project moving forward is one perception. And as a manager of a planning department, I would like my task and my team members to be able to collect data and information and feel comfortable in my own skin, to not feel like somebody's going above my head all the time. I think it depends on the management style, it depends on the employee, and what the tier and threshold the client sets up.
Thank you.
If I can add something, one of the provisions actually in B9 talks about private discussions with decision makers in any matter prohibited by law or by agency rules, procedures, or custom. And in my experience, and probably in the experience of the other panelists, there's a lot of informal discussion that happens between applicants, planners, and public agency planners throughout the submittal process. And I think part of that is because many public agency folks offer recommendations to an elected commission or board who ultimately makes the final decision. So I think that would at least partially be subject to what local customs are.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And as planning, we're supposed to be an open process and consider all sorts of ideas, talk to all sorts of people. The lines there perhaps are a little blurry, but I think that, again, without looking at the principles, it takes the application of a lot of common sense and kind of the best practice of conduct. And I think that as we go through the discussion of everything, that's a thread that will run through it all.
Thank you. So in this presentation of the plan to the client, Terry claims she, quote, worked really hard on it for months, unquote. Is that a problem for a certified planner?
Yeah, I think yes. I think one of the worst things that you can do, certified planner in any profession, is to claim as your own the work of someone else. Perhaps Terry worked really hard reviewing the plan, but I certainly feel really badly that Terry did not give credit to Cindy for all the work that she put into it.
I love how the writers of our skits tend to create really complex things that are hard to tease out. This one, though, as Linda said, is pretty easy.
I would have to agree, and if we were looking at the actual ethics B17, we shall not use the product of others' efforts to seek professional recognition or acclaim intended for producers of original work. The other part I'd like to say is there is no I in team. So usually everything is a team approach. So give credit to the team, and actually this should be a problem for people that do not have AICP as well. We should always give credit to those that deserve it.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good point. The first couple of questions we started with were all related to things that have problems with the AICP Code of Ethics. They also have problems with just general ethics and morals and standards from other entities. Mm-hmm. That's right on the money. The other thing I got to say is, you know, we write skits and then we put people that we have available into the positions. So some of the names are kind of generic. They can be either he or she. So just so we get this one correct, does Terry, former director and aunt, does her conversation with Jackie, current director and niece, about expediting the plan review run counter to the principles or rules?
I'll start this one if you want. I think perception is key. Maybe do not talk about your personal relationship when you're asking questions. I wouldn't bring up the reunion. This is also another thing, depending on how deep you have in the consulting world or your staff, can somebody else answer that basic question? And I think it's worthwhile to assign that task to somebody else to answer that question versus putting yourself in a perception situation where you were given something that another applicant was not. So I think there was, like I said, once again, it's perception and it's just a basic question.
And I'm going to take yours a little bit farther, saying that, okay, one of the things we don't know is whether Jackie is the only planner in the office, but let's assume for the sake of this discussion that she is. Okay, that is the only person who can answer the question regardless of who asks. But there was more than one person in the firm that could have called Jackie and asked the question, and perhaps that would have been the smarter, common sense, best practice sort of approach to it. And again, going back to what Debbie said about if it doesn't smell right, then don't do it.
Right, yeah, there's a reasonable opportunity to avoid the appearance of conflict of interest here, and they should have taken advantage of that.
The one thing that I noticed was that the community actually does have a process for expediting a review, mm-hmm. if you want to spend the money. So expedition is probably not foreign to them and the idea of pushing something. But there's got to be a process in place to do that. All right, next question. Do any of the concerns change if Cindy, the junior staff, isn't a certified planner?
I'll jump out and say I don't think so.
I don't either.
I mean, she's working under the direction of two certified planners, so I believe the ethics assertions would still be valid.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree.
I would, yes.
So If Jackie had to take a leave of absence and the city contracted with ABC planners to have Terry return for the interim, could the firm submit plans for review to the city through Brad, ABC's owner?
That one doesn't feel right. Any other way? I know one of the, we might be looking at A to C about avoiding the appearance of a conflict and whether a conflict exists technically or not, and if lawyers can say, you know, oh, there's no conflict, it sure looks like there's one. So if I were involved in this in any way, shape, or form, I would say, this is not a good idea.
I agree, and I think in the profession every day we're faced with situations of knowing in your gut what is right, knowing your history and your experience, and taking the high road and doing the right thing will always win in the end.
Thank you. Kind of what I thought. All right. So to go along with that question, would it make any difference if they came through a non-certified Cindy? Or is it still the same issues that you've mentioned?
I think the issue still exists. I mean,
Absolutely.
Ultimately, someone's going to be, it's just a matter of which ethics are violated, whether it's the official AICP Code of Ethics or local issue or custom.
Even company policies. There's a lot of company policies about mentorship and communication. There's project manager responsibilities, task manager responsibilities. So within a consulting company, there's a tier that you follow.
Totally agree.
So we're about ready to go on to the next. Do you want to go through the questions, Peter? Why don't we do that? If you could read them.
Yeah.
Yeah, change glasses. Got it. Okay. The first question is, was Brad the only certified planner? And in this, we assume that all planners are certified unless otherwise noted. And so we've played around with that, that scenario quite a bit with this. Oh, the number again is as answered on the screen, 912-0294. Type that in the search box and it'll pop right up. I tried it earlier. She did write the 30,000 feet requirement that she was trying to get around. It wasn't clear in the skit. I don't think she did. I think she was just trying to push the process a little bit. And I'll hopefully relying a little bit on family connections.
The next two comments I'd actually like to speak to, and they're about accepting work knowing that there is an unrealistic time frame or unrealistic fee or other expectations. And as Bud points out in the comments, that is a very specific violation of 2 points of the code. One is that we should, B11, we shall not solicit prospective clients or employment through the use of false or misleading claims, harassment, or duress. So saying that you can get a 6-month process finished in 3 months, knowing full well that you can't or it's not reasonable to do so, would be a violation of that. And B13 is we shall not sell or offer to sell services by stating or implying an ability to influence decisions by improper means, such as trying to get the process, not the formal expedited process, but just trying to get the reviewer to move them to the top of the queue.
And to piggyback on that, there is, in a consulting firm, you do look for people that have experience with the products and services you deliver. So while you may not be able to expedite things, go around regulations, get things waived specifically, you are hired for knowledge, and that knowledge is key for your previous position a lot of the times. It just depends on where you came from and what the regulations are if you could be hired, but that knowledge, that experience is really vital in some of the hires that consulting firms do.
And adding to that is through your experience, you're going to know exactly what specific things are required for the applications. And that's your job, is to make sure that the client works with you to produce that information that gets the application through in a timely manner, but one that still complies with the timetable that's in the code or whatever whatever you're doing. And to me, that's getting things done in a manner that that's acceptable and legal, and not trying to say, I want it done in 2 weeks when I know your turnaround time is 4. And that's what you're hired for. Now, every client wants you to do things as fast as possible, but your response to them has got to be, that cannot be done. In Delaware, I can't get a state review of a comprehensive plan for 2 months. Okay, so, it can't be done in a month. So that's an example of something where, well, if everything's right, the review will come. But if you don't provide all the information, it might take longer.
Linda brought up a good point, because with clients, there's an education level as well. The education of what the state requirements are, what the federal, what the local. So the education part, I think, is important, and we have to be realistic and, educate some of our clients actually to let them know what the true process is and what it's involved. What they want to cut out of it, we can go ahead and give some recommendations from our experience.
I want to jump to the last question. Should we see something different than the slide that says, if you have questions or observations, please type them into the question box? Right now, no. You're good. So let's go back. But the line cross, is that the former city employee wrote the process for expediting the process and still asked to have it waived by a family member? Interesting point. I think that's kind of the point of all the discussion we've seen so far.
Yep, and yeah, Section B3, that is definitely a specific point of contention.
I would say that's pretty black and white, unlike some of the other things that are a little bit more fuzzy.
And we will ask about quite gray things in a little bit. Brad appears to have hired Terry to expedite projects with her former employer. Is he in violation of the Code of Ethics?
I'm going to say no, and I'm going to bring up one of the things that Debbie mentioned earlier, is that people hire you for your expertise. Hopefully, Brad hired Terry because she knows the process, knows what's required at step 1 and step 2 and step 3, and not for Terry to try and subvert a time period or the submission of requirements. I don't see anything that tells me that Brad hired Terry to do something that's not legal.
Anybody else?
Agreed.
I would agree as well. It all comes out in the wash. If they're doing something illegal, it will come out.
Next question. How about the general ethics of firms to ignore a TES species? Oh, is that the
endangered tree moss? Yeah, which I'm assuming is food for the striped muskrat. I'm not sure, but
Brown squirrel.
yeah, that one's pretty clear. There are two parts of Section A principles in the code that are violated by that. Section A1 is our overall responsibility to the public. Section B is we shall have special concern for the long-range consequences of present actions. And even more directly, Section G, we shall endeavor to conserve and preserve the integrity and heritage of the natural and built environment. So in addition to legal consequences, definitely a violation of the code.
Another area is not everybody's perfect. So you will, in your life and in reviewing applications, find some things that hopefully won't be a surprise, but regulations are changing all the time. So if there is something that pops up, for example, with the moss, find out more information, find out from a regulation, come up with a solution
to kind of ease that talk, I think, with your supervisor as well, to say, we just found this out, I have contacted so-and-so and collected this data, this information, here's a recommendation moving forward. That helps any manager know that you've done your due diligence, you've done some resources, and you actually have an opinion on the matter that I think weighs.
Okay, that's it for the, we have a final question. How are Jackie and Terry allowed to work together at the city if they were related? Isn't this a violation?
Depends on the municipality. It happens all the time.
I didn't see anything. I was looking at family relationships earlier in the code, and I don't see anything unless it's improperly influencing a decision. But Debbie's right. We're a state with a lot of smaller agencies, and that's not uncommon, both on either side of this equation.
Good.
I did the same research knowing that Delaware is a smaller state, and I didn't see anything that where one of these principles or code of conduct would be violated because there were relatives working in the same agency. But again, it all goes back to how things are conducted. So. And again, I think we're okay there.
For the AICP code, I'm not sure that some kind of state code or perhaps local code doesn't come into play with nepotism, but not as far as AICP goes. So Peter, we're up for the next skit. How about throwing it down? Dalton is a town within Terry County with a population of approximately 21,000 people. The community has long been an affluent bedroom community, home to many doctors, lawyers, and corporate executives from Amazoogle, a large employer in a neighboring town about 20 miles away. There has always been a small community of lower-income households who are mostly Latino and African American near the downtown of Dalton. The area surrounding Dalton includes a number of low-wage employers who provide employment for this low-income pocket of Dalton, including Amazoogle and many service sector jobs that support the booming tourism industry in the ski resorts in the area. In Terry County's consolidated plan, developed as part of the Community Development Block Grant Program, the Fair Housing Action Plan includes a goal to provide more affordable housing, including housing to support low-income populations in Dalton. A developer who has developed many well-managed low-income apartments in nearby Terry City has acquired 7 acres and has approached the Dalton Planning Office about developing the property, utilizing low-income housing tax credits. This property is located along the bus route that serves several employers and is one of the few properties zoned for apartment construction in Dalton. From the perspective of Terry County's Community Development Planner, Gemma, this location is ideal for the proposed development. Gemma placed a call to Jerry, Dalton's planning director, to discuss the project.
Good morning, Jerry. How's everything going with you?
You know how it is in local government. Every day's a party.
I know what you mean. I need to talk to you about a project that's coming your way. Quality Housing has been awarded low-income tax credits to build apartments on the Smith property on Terry Highway. The tax credits come with some really tight time constraints, so I wanted to talk to you to see if you can work with them to meet their timelines.
Of course we can, so long as the developer makes timely submissions and the plan meets the requirements of the zoning ordinance.
Great. Joe Putman will be calling you to set up a meeting with you. And if you hit any glitches or during the process, call me. This project is a priority in terms of meeting our goals for our fair housing plan. I need to do what I can to help it along.
Later that day, Mayor Jacobs stopped by Jerry's office to talk to him privately.
I've got wind of a problem and I need you to help me squash it.
Of course. You know I'm your go-to gal.
Good. I knew I can count on you. Anyway, that guy Joe Putnam, who built all those housing projects in Terry City, that joker thinks he's going to come into Dalton and build projects here, and on the Smith property of all places. You need to squash it. It will not fit in with the houses in Snooty Point. You know there's no way we can let those people Move in next to Delton's nicest, most exclusive neighborhood. Oh, well, that might be a tough one. The property is zoned for apartments, so as long as it meets the requirements of the zoning ordinance, there really is no grounds for denial. And it might be a fair housing violation to deny it. Jerry, I'm getting tired of your excuses. It seems like every time I want something done, you throw the code at me telling me why it can't be done my way. The code is a guideline, not the Bible, and you need to start using your judgment as to when to apply it strictly if you want a future with Delton. You know that property was rezoned so that luxury apartments could be built, not tomorrow's slums. Your job is to protect the community character. Letting lazy people sponging off the government into Delton does not protect the community character, now does it?
Next week, Jerry meets with Joe Putnam to discuss the project.
Good afternoon, Jerry. It's nice to meet you. I have heard good things about the work you are doing in Delton.
Well, thank you. It is nice to meet you, too.
So here is a layout of my proposal. It is similar to the Somerset in Terry City. I am sure you have seen the write-ups on it as a model community for low-income families. We make a point to create an environment where people thrive and can move out of poverty. The community center has high-tech resources that allow for residents to take classes online to earn their GED and enroll in other training programs. Our way of doing things is the future of housing to help people move up. And so far, our success has been great.
Well, that is great. While it might work in Terry City, I am not sure it will work in Delton. Our community is a little different, as I'm sure you understand.
Of course I know your community is a little different. Delton is the reason that Terry County is under scrutiny from HUD. For years, nothing in Delton was zoned for apartments, all high-end single-family. Then, 2 years ago, City Council rezoned the Smith property. Once it went into foreclosure, I thought this was a great opportunity to build some quality, affordable housing in an area the county's consolidated plan says it's needed. Anyway, Gemma told me you would help me out with this. She said she talked to you.
Well, let's go through the process so you can make your application.
Quality Housing submits the development application. Jerry assigns it to Mike for review. Mike is a relatively young planner who recently earned his AICP.
Mike, you will get to review the proposal for the Smith property. This is pretty political, so I will want to review your drafts along the way. I know that the property is zoned for apartments, but we need to find some flaws in this. You know, give the Planning Commission something they can grab onto if they want to deny it.
Is that fair? Aren't we just supposed to review the project based on how it stacks up against the zoning ordinance?
That may be what they teach you in planning school, but in real life, it can't always be that simple.
Mike has seen that Jerry is under a lot of pressure. The mayor has spent a lot of time in her office lately, and whenever the mayor leaves, Jerry looks as if she's going to be sick. Clearly, Jerry doesn't want Mike to bias his report against the project, so Mike decides he's going to do this report like he would do any other report. Isn't that what he agreed to in joining the AICP? Mike turns his draft report into Jerry for review, and Jerry calls Mike into her office.
Mike, this comes across as a glowing report. How is the Planning Commission supposed to find flaws in this application?
Jerry, I don't know what to tell you. They have a really good engineer on this, and the engineer paid close attention to our code requirements. Actually, in many areas, this application exceeds what we would require. This is going to be a quality community, and it would actually blend well within the surroundings because of how they did the layout.
I get it. But the mayor has made it clear that he does not want this to go forward. With this report going to the Planning Commission, there is no way they will deny it, even if all the NIMBYs come out. This could cost me my job.
Look, Jerry, I don't envy your position, but this is the report I wrote. I need to make it the best recommendations possible based on my review. If you want to change it, go ahead, but please take my name off it.
Mike and Gemma had gone to graduate school together and had gotten to be pretty good friends. They have stayed friendly as they started their planning careers. Mike knew that Gemma was very knowledgeable and passionate about fair housing, so he thought maybe he would call her to get her thoughts. Even though his name wouldn't be on the report, he just didn't feel right about his office trying to submarine a project that met all the code requirements just because of the people who would live there. Mike called Gemma, and they decided to meet for lunch.
Hey, it is good to see you. It seems like forever.
I know, work is crazy, and with the kids at home now, I just don't get much time to catch up with old friends.
I need to ask you something off the record. I feel stuck in a tight spot.
Shoot, you know you helped me out in some buy-ins during our second year of school. I'm sure I owe you one.
Quality Housing submitted an application to develop the Smith Farm. You probably know about it since it received low-income housing tax credits. Anyway, Jerry asked me to find flaw in it when I did my review. It seems like she's trying to sink it. I'm not sure what to do. I did my report and turned it over to Jerry. I told her I won't change it, and that if she does change it, to take my name off it. I know she's been under a lot of pressure, but it just doesn't seem right. Anyway, I guess I'm on her bad side right now.
Are you kidding me? I called Jerry about this project, and she assured me that it would go smoothly if it complied with zoning. I also asked her to call me if there were any glitches. You guys can't deny that application. It will jeopardize the entire county's CDBG funding. And if we lose our funding, Delton will never be able to get the funds to rehab the older homes in the downtown. You need to stop her from changing it. Go over her head. Something. I really don't want to have to try and encourage a fair housing complaint against Delton.
I can't go over her head. I'm pretty sure this is coming from the mayor. I'm sorry. I didn't realize that you and Jerry had talked. I guess I put myself in the middle of this mess, eh?
Mike decided that the best course of action was to talk to Jerry directly, to share his concerns, and to be direct that he thought maybe Jerry's approach began to cross ethical lines.
Jerry, we need to talk. I think you are making a big mistake if you change my report on the Smith property.
I know you mean well, but you don't understand the challenges of managing a department, of trying to keep elected officials happy.
But Jerry...
But what?
Please just hear me out. Let me finish. And when I'm done, if you want to disregard my concerns, go ahead. I know how seriously you take your professional ethics as a planner, and I guess I understand on some level how, as you climb the ladder, the lines become, well, a little grayer. But I'm worried that trying to sync this project crosses a line, and once you cross it, you can't take it back. I think you will regret it.
Hi, we're back. So you've heard a little bit about the conundrums of Delton, big and small. Again, unless described otherwise, all planners in the Skit are soon to be certified. We have with us a unique panel to summarize the ethical issues in Terry County. With us are Carrie Casey, Karen Horton, Ed O'Donnell, and back again is Linda Robb. So Carrie Sawyer Casey is the manager of the Newcastle County Division of Community Development and Housing. As a direct U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development entitlement grantee, the county is the grantee. Carrie is responsible for management of $20 million in federal funding annually. Carrie is the chairwoman of the statewide Continuum of Care Board of Directors, and serves on the board of directors for the Delaware Chapter of the National Association of Housing and Redevelopment Officials and the Delaware Housing Coalition. Karen Horton is a principal planner with the Delaware State Housing Authority. In this capacity, she works to promote inclusive and sustainable communities through both her growth management and fair housing roles. Karen works with program managers within DSHA to implement policies articulated in the state growth management strategy into DSHA programs and remove impediments in DSHA programs as identified in the Delaware State Continuum's analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. Most recently, Karen has been active in development of the Downtown Development District Grant Program. These various roles allow Karen to provide assistance to local jurisdictions in their efforts to promote diverse and sustainable communities. Karen, as a member of the Delaware State Consortium, was a recipient of the 2013 Andrew J. Turner Fair Housing Award. Karen is a native of Dover and holds a bachelor's degree in sociology from the University of Delaware and a master's degree in city and regional planning from Clemson. She's a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners. Ed O'Donnell's career has spanned more than 40 years, characterized by professional leadership, public service, outstanding quality, and transformative change. A visionary regional approach to planning and strong environmental ethic permeate a career that has included directing an MPO comprising 3 counties in 3 states, crafting a landmark county comprehensive plan and unified development code, completing allied research on land use and transportation, and accomplishing an enduring legacy of environmental protection in a bi-state watershed and in the vast land holdings of a private school. Ed, through his current work with the University of Delaware's Institute of Public Administration, continues to shape Delaware's future and will likely will for generations. And again, Linda Robb works with the IPA at UD, and she works with a bunch of the state's municipalities. To summarize it. So I'll start with questions for the panel. That's enough. Until the time the application is submitted, has anything occurred contrary to the certified planner's rules or principles? I'll leave it open to anybody to talk.
Well, I looked long and hard, and I'm thinking probably not, but I see perhaps some people might be going down a slippery slope. And again, when you hear, you're in an office, whether it's the planning office or you're a consultant or whatever, people talk about things, whether they like it or they don't, but you kind of have to put your serious professional hat on when the application actually comes in. The mayor, I think, was just not acting very professional, you know, but we know that these kinds of things happen, especially with our elected officials. They'll come in and just tell you how much, oh, I heard this is going to happen and I really hate it, you know, and you know, sort of implying that I hope you can find a way that you can recommend against it, but, you know, honest and truly, probably nothing really bad has happened. Hopefully the mayor, him or herself, had a code of ethics, whether it's written or personal, but we don't know.
And I would just echo what Linda said, and also in terms of the mayor, and I know we're talking specifically about planning ethics, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but you know, the mayor has to certify that the mayor is affirmatively furthering fair housing choice, and to say something that we can't let those people move into this community. You know, there has to be, you know, that obviously is a major violation of that rule, and I think that then ties into the ethics and beginning to have those conversations between the mayor and the planner. You know, I do think it is a slippery slope. You're starting to go down, and you know, whether we hear it or not, those things definitely happen. And I'm kind of wearing my Gemma hat as the director of housing, and you know, it's important that those, you know, the mayor gets called out for that type of, you know, really flagrant violation of the Fair Housing Act.
Yeah, I think so far, I think Jerry has acted correctly on the principles to which we aspire in the beginning part here. Basically, in part A, we should always be conscious of the rights of others, and that includes the developer and his application. That also gets into the social justice aspect of it, because this is what this is about on this housing project. Also, when you take a look at, we should
letter H, which is we shall deal fairly with all participants in the planning process. So far she's walked the line, I think, to this point.
So the next question is, so the next step was Jerry told Mike that we need to find some flaws. Does that violate the code?
I would say that it violates number 18 of the rules of conduct. When you shall not direct or coerce other professionals to make analysis or reach findings not supported by the available evidence. And clearly, Mike had done a thorough review, and there it was, from all indications in Mike's report, it was a very well done proposal, and for the planning director to try to find something to find flaws, that would be in violation of Rule 18.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that, and I think Jerry just fell off the high horse by going that way.
Yeah, I agree, but I don't think Mike has fallen off the high horse just yet. I know one of the things perhaps someone might criticize Mike for would be a violation of B2 about accepting assignments that are clearly illegal or immoral, or not immoral, I'm sorry, or whatever. Because his response is that fair? We're supposed to review the project about how it stacks up against the zoning ordinance. And then, who mentioned earlier something about social responsibility and obligations to fair housing? I think at this point, all that stuff is in Mike's head, and and until we find out something else, it seems like he's going to go forward with something that he thinks is ethically and professionally responsible, and that is, I think, being number 1. But I can't remember now. So, I'm sorry. Principle 2A about independent professional judgment. It looks like he's going down that road right now.
There you go. So what if Jerry, the director, wasn't a certified planner? This is the exclusion, guys. Is the code violated in that case?
Well, yes, the code's violated, but he's not a certified planner, so like you said, he can't be held accountable. But the process has been violated. Yeah.
So is Mike of the town's planning office is this called a GEMA of the county CD office? Does that constitute a breach of the code?
Depends on the process, whether or not he's those two are part of the process of review or not. And is there a formal connection to that? Or is there something that's sub rosa or outside of the process? And I think you have to know that information to determine whether or not there's a violation occurring.
And I guess you could also, in terms of, is it a private communication, which is part of the rules of conduct, number 8, which states you're not supposed to engage in private communications with planning process participants. But if you don't know if they're actually involved in decision making, I mean, in some ways I see this as, Mike friends with Gemma calling to get opinion, on this fair, but I think you really have to try, if you're looking at it objectively, keep it as objective as possible. And obviously Gemma, which, again, I can relate to Gemma very much, as a affordable housing division director in the Newcastle County, she's going to give her opinion loudly, and it's important that it's voiced, but I think you have to, when he's doing his analysis, it has to stay objective and then confidential.
And I think if he's going to her in the capacity of, this is our fair housing contact, and this is the person who I'd go to for advice on these type of issues, that would be an appropriate conversation to have, because you're looking to see, are we going down this slippery slope or not? And she's clearly setting them back on path within the role of her actual job.
So there was Mike faced a conundrum there, and when he said standards become grayer when you climb the ladder, is that actually true? I mean, this may not be a code thing, but it's a question for y'all.
I don't buy that personally. I mean, it seems to me as time goes by, the picture becomes very clear as you gain experience. And you begin, you know, it might have started out gray, but once you gain some experience, you know black and white, and you know this is good, this is bad. And if it doesn't feel good, it's probably not good. Yeah.
I agree with you, Ed, and I'm going to add one more thing. I think that your principles don't change. You know what's right and wrong, okay? But as you progress in your career, I think you start to understand how complicated things can get and how many aspects there are to each issue that you might deal with or might be asked about. That doesn't mean, however, that the line between right and wrong becomes grayer. And I think I'll conclude with the same sentence that Ed did. They only become clearer.
Yeah. And I think with more experience, and I mean, I guess in the best case scenario, with more experience and more education and ongoing training and a knowledge of the code and the rules of providing housing for all different types of folks in your community. I mean, I think those, you know, you as a leader have to, it starts from the top, you have to lead by example and do what is right. I mean, I think this example is pretty, you know, cut and dry, but I do think it's important in any organization that you lead by example, and it never becomes grayer the higher you go. I mean, I know it's, you know, I think that's the most important thing to actually lead by.
And also, just to take it from the Code of Ethics, you know, it's one of the principles to which we aspire, you know, our responsibility to our profession and colleagues is that we contribute to our profession by improving knowledge and techniques. And as we learn more as we go along, it's important to share it. And as Linda said, it may not always be very easy to do, but to the extent that we can, it's important that we do make that effort.
So I want to jump ahead in your list of questions. Yes, they're cheating. They have those list of questions. This scenario blends two of several sets of standards. The AICP Code of Ethics and the standards required when accepting federal funds. How do they relate? Are they truly independent of each other? And I'm looking for specifically the folks that deal in federal funds a lot.
I'll start, and then Karen, my partner, we're part of a fair housing task force here in the state, a group, and we work closely together on this issue. But I think Karen would agree. We both believe that the Code of Ethics and the standards required when accepting federal funds relate to each other and are not independent of each other. And I'm going to speak briefly on the federal funding piece, because that's you know, really what part we do. Beyond the prohibitions on discrimination and requirements to make reasonable accommodations, the Fair Housing Act also requires state and local governments to receive federal funds to affirmatively further fair housing, and that means that you must take actions that would be reasonable, expected to help reverse historic patterns of segregation and increase fair housing choice. So every year when we submit our information to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development on how we plan to spend our funding, our county executive, our mayor, our governor signs a form that certifies that we as a government are going to affirmatively further fair housing choice. And it is a standard, and I think that's, you know, how it relates closely to the Code of Ethics as well. Same sort of code that we are required to live by as we do not just our affordable housing work, but also our zoning and other aspects of our land use and other departments.
Mm-hmm. And just to add to that is that also speaks to, as we mentioned before, the interrelatedness between our decisions in the planning process. And several things are happening here as we go through this process is one, this squashing, this proactive wanting to squash it by the mayor, is that disparate treatment and is, raises not only, at a minimum, when you accept federal funds, you should not discriminate. So the mayor, his intent is not even to go affirmatively for fair housing. Here he is, he's trying to squash it, so he's overtly discriminating. And then you also look at what was existing in the community as well. It brings up other issues, is that there had been nothing but single-family detached housing, and this actually was the first opportunity in a very long time for some type of rental community that would house a lower income household to pop up, and then here is this argument against it. And then also when you add this community character piece that was added to Mike's report, that he didn't add it, but Jerry, the planning director, did, this is not something that's consistent as part of the planning process. In fact, it was put specifically on this project. That also raises the liability of the town for a fair housing violation, because the processes have to be the same for all land use proposals going through. So there is really true interrelatedness between all of this decision making and all of these processes that are occurring that everybody that is involved, Jerry, Mike, all of them, Mary Jacobs has to be aware of. Mayor Jacobs, because even though he may not be AICP certified, he does not want to lose that federal funding, and he certainly doesn't want his town sued.
The implication when you look at this skit is that this town is under scrutiny anyway by HUD. Mm-hmm. So there's something amiss in the town to begin with, and it seems like this is really just jeopardizing their whole relationship with the housing and HUD and everybody else. So from that standpoint, it is a slippery slope for the mayor to be going his way. I mean, he's already under scrutiny, so why would he pursue it? The other question is, and I think somebody raised it, what's the code of ethics for the mayor? Does the town have its own code of ethics? And I saw one of the comments up here on the screen was that if Jerry and the mayor got into this conversation, Jerry would be calling for the town manager to intervene and say, and say, let's solve this, either refer this to the ethics board of the town or somebody else at this point in time. So you're crossing all kinds of jurisdictions of responsibility here as to whose ethics are governing. Is it AICP's ethics? Is it the town's ethics? Is it just the moral ethics of the people?
Okay, Peter, are we going to play something?
2, 3 scenarios.
Why don't we play them? I'm not sure we'll get to questions on them. Does that make sense? Jerry went to meet with the mayor.
Mayor, I know that you want me to find a way to squash the development on the Smith property, but I just can't. It is an extremely well-planned project that exceeds most of the standards of our code. Also, by rejecting the project, we leave the town open to fair housing challenges. So to use your words, I think it could, quote, damage the character of our community if you don't give this a fair shake. Also, I have legal and ethical obligations to be fair in my review.
You are going to ruin our community for your so-called ethics. Remember, you work for me. You keep this up and you'll be looking for a new job.
I understand. That is your prerogative. But I need to do what the code and my ethics tell me is right. I just wanted to let you know so you aren't caught off guard when you see my report. Now I need to go. My son has a baseball game at 5:30. Mike, you are right. I will not change the report.
Thanks. You know that this is the right choice.
2 weeks later, as Mike prepares for the Planning Commission meeting.
Jerry, I thought you weren't going to change the report. You didn't tell me you were changing it. I only noticed it as I was making my notes for my presentation.
Jerry makes changes to Mike's report to include a section in the report about community character, a section that the office has never used in their reports before. The report indicates that the proposed development, while consistent with the zoning ordinance, is not consistent with the character of the area. Mike tells Jerry that he will not attend the meeting because he objects. 2 weeks later at the Planning Commission meeting, Jerry is surprised to see Gemma come to the podium during the public hearing.
I'm here to warn you. The town of Delton has an obligation to afford for housing for all segments of the population, not just the upper crust. These apartments are needed in Delton, and quite frankly, if you fail to do your duty and approve the proposal, you'll be on the wrong end of a fair housing lawsuit.
So we've heard the three scenarios. I'm not sure we're going to have enough time to entertain them with questions. I did want to go back to the questions that you guys have submitted. And I'll go with the first one that I see. When you're hired by a client for a project, and the information that benefits said client, but you also have information that would benefit those that oppose the project, and are not experts in obtaining such information, are you as a planner obligated to provide such information to those opposed to the project? I think there's a portion of the code that actually says that your first responsibility is to your client, especially as a private practice planner. As a city planner, I'm not sure that's quite true.
You got to be careful there because, yeah, your responsibility is to the client, but you're in a public process. Public process has records. Records are transparent and are open to the public. So I submit a FOIA request and ask to see the records. So yeah, you're going to get all the information. I'm not going to put the information aside somewhere that's going to be negative to the project. So from my standpoint, all information is on the table. It's a transparency issue. And it's a fairness issue to the general public, and it's a public trust issue. If you're not going to share the full information.
Any other thoughts?
Well, I think that in the private practice, if you are preparing for a public hearing or something where you are presenting an application, you are, as a part of your preparation, going to think about, okay, what sorts of, I'll say, negative comments, you know, not to use the word protests or whatever might come, and how we might respond to them. But your records, I don't know, honestly, I have to, Debbie, maybe you can help me out. Well, Debbie's not here now. I'm not sure how public they are. You know, if I'm, now the kind of practice that I have is a little bit different because I'm working for the University of Delaware, okay? But when I was a private consultant and, you know, just working for myself, I don't know whether I would have to turn over my records to everyone as Ed would when he had a planning director job. So I'm not sure there, but I agree with Ed. Whatever records you have in the public sector, everybody, they're open to everybody. No question about that.
So I like this question. As a young planner, how did Mike get such a nice big office? That's through the magic of Peter. Of course, the theme through these skits has been nepotism, so maybe that had something to do with it. If the mayor of, the next question, if the mayor of my city came to see me and pressured me like that, I'd bring in the city manager, because it's not in my pay grade to deal with the mayor without running things through the city manager. Mm-hmm. And I addressed that a few minutes ago.
Right. Yeah, you know, from that standpoint, you have to call time out and say, you know, let's go to the hierarchy of who's making the decisions here and who I work for and things like that. Right. And then also, does the town govern by ethics as well? Have an ethics code? And the city manager might point out to the mayor that, Mr. Mayor, you're on very shaky ground here. You might want to reconsider your position.
So, Peter, could you drag that in the door? The quote here is, she stepped over when she challenged her subordinate to find flaws. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think we've gone over that pretty well. I think that's true.
Yeah.
18 and 20, if there's a correlation between low income and race. So 18 and 20 must be code citations. We're looking here. Now, I'm not quite sure what that means.
I think that goes to a lot of the public and national discussion about the whole disparate impact, and that when you are against proposals that may have a disproportionate amount of protected classes in it, and then you make decisions that are against that, then you therefore are effectively denying access to housing for that race or whatever that protected class is. So there is some correlation. Not in every circumstance, but in many circumstances there are.
The last question I see, I think the pressure to do the bidding of elected officials becomes greater the further in your career and the higher your position. Not necessarily that things are no longer black and white. The woman in the skit even states that she is feeling immense pressure to get the job, to get the project denied, or face losing her job. And that's pretty much the point of the skit. That's a quintessential issue.
And one thing that we really, and I think in working with the state and the other jurisdictions, is that unfortunately there is pressure, and what we've really tried to put together annually is to require our elected officials and our planning staff and our housing staff to attend fair housing training. For this specific issue, is to be, that it's important that we bring education to fair housing choice and the requirements of that as a jurisdiction. And you can only build that foundation on this specific issue with the foundation of education and understanding what's implied. So that's something that we know is it, but with continued education and outreach on the issue, that you might actually be able to turn that around once someone's educated on it and realizes the impact. Absolutely.
I want to thank you all for listening. I think we have a short. Oh, I'm sorry. We're not that far in. Yeah, I thought.
Well, if I could kind of dovetail on what Carrie said about education, about processes and rules, I think that extends to just about anything that we planners deal with, especially if it's in government. And I'm thinking specifically, let's talk about elected officials and planning commissioners. It's important to educate them on what are the rules for, say, doing a zoning change, making a change to your code, things like that. You need to know what's required at the state level, as well as that you have to look at your local levels. So the bottom line here is education on all levels.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a couple questions on the scenarios. In scenario one, Jerry had a conversation with the mayor about the nature of the staff report on the project. Is that a problem for well, her or him, depending on which gender we're talking about now? Is there an issue with talking with the mayor?
Depends on what the process is. Again, is the mayor part of the decision making? If he's part of the decision making, that may not be a problem. If he's outside of decision making, that may present some problems.
So in scenario two, Mike finds that his staff report was altered by adding a community character section. Does Jerry have a problem?
The one thing I thought about this is this community character kind of thing. Is that a factor that should have been taken into consideration in other applications and wasn't? But they decided, oh, that's in the code. We can use it for this one.
Yeah, that's
and
good.
that thing that really bothered me about that, and you know, like I said, independent judgment and following the laws that you're supposed. I don't know the numbers, but that's what bothered me about that. I almost didn't even have to look up what principle was violated, but to me, that's.
Yeah, that's a good point, because if it's in the code and they've just never used it, and now they pull it out, okay, so it may be legal from the code standpoint. You have an inconsistency problem, though, right. And you're probably wide open to a suit from other people that may have been turned down, you know, and you said you didn't consider community character in my application, you know. So yeah, that's a good point, Linda. Is that part of the code, or did they just invent it for this application? If they just invented it and pulled it out of nowhere, then they do really have a problem.
We just had a comment come in on the chat pod, and it says community character, not in other reviews, is disparate treatment. The lawsuit will soon follow.
Yeah.
And note that discrepancy.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, while it may not be actually specifically indicated in the Code of Ethics, it's certainly something that the planner is going to have to pay attention to when it comes to attorneys, especially in Delaware, which seems to have an awful lot of attorneys. On that, we've got 2 minutes left. I'd like to thank you all for listening. I think we have we've covered a lot of ground today, and I want to thank the panelists we had, both before, Carrie, Karen, Ed, and Linda again, and the previous panelists as well. I'm Jim Galvin. I hope you keep listening and pay attention to the Ohio APA website for future planning webcasts. And Peter's going to do a closeout.
This concludes the webinar. I want to thank our panelists as well as the members of the Delaware Chapter that have performed in the skits. Our cast members are Bill Brockenbrough, Janelle Cornwell, Jim Galvin, Mary Ellen Gray, Mike Hahn, Molly Rayleigh, and Bill Switek. I'm Peter Von Glahn. Again, this session has been approved for 1 1/2 Ethics CM credits. Please check ohioplanning.org for future presentations from our co-sponsors. Thanks for joining us.